January 38. It's yours. I have the big one. Yeah, positive, yes. Morning, Abraham.
Morning, man.
Morning, Shmuel. By the way, we saw Mike Dahan this morning. Shmuel, he was here for the minyan, our first minyan. We had Shmuel Rave was here today, so we had two of the members were live early this morning at 6:30 minyan. Okay, we're on Lamed Ches Samar Aleph. I want to thank Morris for setting it up. Okay, the Gemara says the following. We started yesterday, we spoke about the Shetita. Shetita, we said, when Rashi explained the Shetita, that was they took the wheat kernels and they roasted it in the oven, and then they ground it into flour, and they mixed it with some other ingredients. And the question was, what is the proper bracha on the Shetita? That was the machloket in the Gemara. It's like in the middle of the page. Shetita Rav Oma Shakol Niyavaro. Everyone have it? Shetita. We have the Shetita, so we have a machloket between Rav and Shmuel. Those are two rabbis that disagreed on many issues. And Rav and Shmuel, Rav says the bracha on the Shetita is Shakol Niyeh B'Dvaro, is the Shahakol. And Shmuel says the bracha on the Shetita is Borei Minei Mezono. That's the bracha on the Shetita. It's Borei Minei Mezono. And the Gemara said, Amar Rav Chisda says, V'lo pligi. Rav Chisda says there's no machloket. There's no machloket between the two Chachamim, Rav and Shmuel. Meaning, again, you have the flour in this mix, and one says mezonot and one says shakol. So the Gemara says haba ava, haba raka. The Gemara says one, you put a lot of flour, it's very thick. When you put a small amount of flour, it's very thin. And the Gemara says the determination is the amount. The Gemara says, but then we have the old question. The old question is that usually when you have something which the 5 grains, it doesn't make a difference if it has a large amount, it doesn't have a large amount. So why over here would we say if it's a small amount, we would say that you do not say a mezonot, right? If we say, let's say this mixture with the honey or the oil, whatever the oil that they put into this, if it's very wet, and it's not so thick, we said the bracha is shahakol. So the question is why shahakol? So the Gemara says you're doing it not for eating purposes, you're doing it for medical purposes. But since you're doing it for the medical purposes, the Gemara says, if you do it, the Gemara says, ava, if you make it thick, so you're doing it for eating purposes. And therefore, since you're doing it for eating purposes, then you go ahead and say a borei minei mezonot. And therefore, however, when you make it very soft, it means that the mixture is very soft, but you put a little bit of flour in. So then you're doing iraka is refuah avdilei, doing it for medical purposes. And therefore, since it's not for using it as normal eating, people eating this as normal food, so you're eating this for the purpose of medical purposes. So therefore, it will not say the bracha borei minei mezonot. So that addresses, Mr. Haber, your question, because since people eat it only for medical purposes, so therefore it will not get the rule of anything that has the 5 species inside. You'll say mezonot. That's when the purpose of the food is to be eaten for the purpose of eating, to fill you up. But if the purpose, like we said before, if you put the flour in just to hold the food, not for the purpose because you want the flour in the food. To hold the food, we would say you would not say a bracha mezonot. The flour is not there for eating purposes. We had another Gemara for you. Giving a hesped. Very good, very good. So therefore, since the point of the food is not to eating purposes, eating for the purpose of just for medical purposes, therefore you will not say borei minei mezonot. Okay. Shahakol. See, the way the Gemara is saying here, the way we're explaining according to Rashi, if you're taking a food, no one eats this food. No one ordinary will eat this food. I mean, if a guy goes ahead and he takes the food that the doctors say it's good for you to eat when a person is sick, but people eat this food when they're not sick as well. So therefore, whatever I'm saying no. Then you would say if it contains mezonot, then you would say mezonot. But if the food contains mezonot, and this food that contains the mezonot is never eaten, it's not eaten for the purpose of filling yourself up, purpose of eating. It's just eating. The only time you will eat this, person has some illness. So therefore, the Gemara is saying over here that food will not say, you won't say mezonot on that food. That's how you would say shakol. That's a good question. With whether you would say a bracha or not, that's a good question. But generally, we will not. It's a good question. I would doubt it, but we have to. That's something that's discussed. Okay. Morning, Mike. Morning. Okay. So the Gemara says,
Rabbi, good morning.
Morning. So now the Gemara, good to see you, Mike, this morning. Mativ Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef.
Likewise, Rabbi.
Now, Rav Yosef asked the following question. Yeshavin shebochashim es hashatut. They agree on Shabbat. On Shabbat, one of the things on Shabbat is you can't take flour and mix it with water and knead the dough and to make it into, and one of the malachot on Shabbat is called lisha, kneading, Kneading, taking 2 loose items and making some sort of item out of it, kneading it together. So that's something you can't do on Shabbat. So now the question is, if you're going to go ahead and take a spoon and mix the shatut, this shatita that has the flour and some other and oil, and you're going to mix it together. So are you allowed to go ahead and mix it with the spoon? Is it called that you're violating the malacha on Shabbat? Same way you can't bake on Shabbat, you can't grind on Shabbat, you can't grind the wheat on Shabbat, you can't knead. Kneading is one of the processes in the baking, and you can't do that on Shabbat. So are you violating the malacha of kneading by making the spoon and mixing this shatita that contains some flour and water, let's say, and oil? Are you violating? So we're talking about soft shatita, which is very light on the flour. It's very wet. It's not gonna get really thick. It's not gonna get that hard, and therefore it says that the Braita says you're allowed to go ahead on Shabbat. You're allowed to go ahead and mix these these ingredients together, because you're not creating a real solid as a result of mixing these two ingredients together. Is that clear? Avram, you hear? Yosef Shmuley, you hear? Yosef Tzaddik. You hear? That's what the Gemara it says. Shavin shebochashin es hashatut b'Shabbat. You're allowed to mix it together because it's there's only a small amount of flour. It's not going to come into a thick item. Vishotin zeisum. So they refer to it as soft and thick. So soft most probably means that it's loose. It's still wet. It's loose. It's not coming to form a hard substance. Like when you take flour and water, right? You pour the water into the flour and then you move it around. It creates a certain togetherness. It becomes together. It comes into one. Two items coming to one. That's the kneading process. But here, the mixing of this is not. It's still didn't get there, and it's not going to get there because you didn't put enough flour in. So now, the way Rashi explains, when you knead two things together like dough, but that's when it will be a problem. But here, it's not going to happen that way. Now, Vishotin Zeisom HaMitzri. And also you could drink Zeitom HaMitzri. What is this? Zeitom HaMitzri is a certain type of drink that it's made from barley, saffron, salt. They take the barley, they take the saffron, they take the salt. They do a third of barley, third of the saffron plant, and a third of salt, and then they soak these three items together, and they eventually grind. They grind it down because it had barley in this, and then they would make a drink out of this, and they would drink this, and this drink was very good for people who have constipation or other issues, stomach issues. This was something that they drank to help with the stomach issues. And the question is, are you allowed to drink that on Shabbat? Because refuah, there's certain things that the rabbis instituted that you can't take certain medications on Shabbat. Certain times you're not allowed to take medication on Shabbat because the rabbis were concerned. Why shouldn't you take medicine on Shabbat? Now, again, if a person is a sakana, person's in danger of life, or any of that, yes, of course, he is allowed to take medications. If a person has an infection, they have a strep throat, anything infection, they take medication. The rabbis did not institute their gezerah in that situation. Meaning to say, what's the problem with taking medicine? It's a pill. But how do you make the pill? How did they make medicine? They would grind the herbs. They would grind the plants, right? How do you make? And they would make through the grinding. After they would grind into small little things. That's how they made the. That's true, but they still did not remove. We don't remove the isur, the prohibition of medication on Shabbat. So the rabbis are more concerned that if you take medication on Shabbat, you might come to actually prepare the medication on Shabbat. And how did they prepare it? By grinding it. And grinding is called tchina. Grinding is one of the melachot on Shabbat that we're not allowed to grind. You can't go ahead and grind something into, and therefore.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I'm sorry to say, but it sounds so stupid because,
Yosef,
like,
you're in 2021. So but you go up, go to the people who go from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, before you win the.
No, okay, but the same reason we are not basically creating melacha on Shabbat and we don't cook in Shabbat, okay? But we prepare it before Shabbat, so we can prepare to take our medicine before Shabbat. So what's the difference? If I prepare it before Shabbat, why there is not allowed to take it on Shabbat? I'm not making any melacha. There is already prepared. I put it aside. I designate this is what I need to take for Shabbat.
So most probably medicine is the type of thing that people most probably are much more prone. They feel that to do such a thing, that for medical purposes, they're gonna go ahead and they might come to grind it. Meaning they most probably saw.
But we don't. But Rabbi, we don't. Let's talk about right now. We don't.
Again,
We don't make any melacha.
Yosef, a person has a medical issue. It's might not be an everyday issue, right? So a person goes ahead and has a medical issue. You're going to say, okay, you can take the medicine on Shabbat. So a person might come. Not everyone is so educated, and also people make mistakes, and maybe the rabbi saw that people were coming to grinding. I mean, why did the Chachamim make the Gezerah? The Chachamim make a Gezerah when they saw a problem, or they saw a problem, or they anticipate a problem. They saw that people will go ahead to allow the person to take medication for any purpose. Then he was going to go. He saw the problem. The people would actually prepare the medication on Shabbat. They saw that, and people might think, you know what, for medical purposes, I could grind it. So maybe what they saw, they were concerned. Again, and even though they were concerned, if a person is in great danger of health, danger of life and death, they did not. And even if it's not life and death, if a person is bedridden on Shabbat and needs a medication in order to prevent him from have to be lie down on Shabbat, he's allowed to take the medication on Shabbat. So,
I'm just like, it doesn't make sense for me. I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what the Chafetz Chaim writes in the Mishnah Berurah. He says, if a person has some sort of ailment that his whole body is affected by it, or he has to lay down in bed because he's so weak as a result of that, even though he's not in any danger, it's permitted to take the medication. So that's the story. Now, we in order to go ahead, Yosef, the rule is, if the Chachamim make a prohibition, in order for us to take off the prohibition, you need another Beis Din, another court that's greater in wisdom and in number to undo what the previous court said, what the other court said. We don't have a Beis Din, a court that's greater in wisdom and in number, to go ahead and undo the Gezerah of the Chachamim. So therefore, they made that the Gezerah. Now, so just like the Chachamim said on Shabbat, if Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbat, you don't blow the shofar on Shabbat. It comes out on Rosh Hashanah. Why not? Why can't I blow? I can't take a lulav. The Torah said that I can't take a lulav on the Shabbat of Sukkot. The first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat, I don't take the lulav. Why not? If Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbat, because the Chachamim saw that people started to carry. They know they're not supposed to carry, like Yosef says. They know you can't do it. But you know what? Comes the holiday, I'm going to go to the rabbi to ask him how to fix this, how to do this. I'm going to go ahead and they'll carry the shofar. How can you carry the shofar? You know you're not allowed to carry the Shabbat. But this is what they saw. What's happened? People, they forget that even though carried by mistake, it's also a big sin. Meaning we have to realize violation of the Shabbat, even in doing a mistake, is also a serious thing. Just b'shogeg, because the person will forget the Chacham said better don't blow the shofar on Shabbat or Rosh Hashanah. The Rabbi Leo Lapian points out how powerful, what does it mean to keep the Shabbat, that because there might be some individuals. So Yosef, it doesn't mean that everybody, a person like you, Yosef at Tzaddik, maybe the rabbis weren't worried about a guy like you making the mistake. But there are a lot of different types of Jewish people. There's the farmers, there's the simple men, there's all different types of Jewish people, and they might make the mistake. You don't need that it has to be that every individual will make a mistake. You won't make the mistake. But because of other people, the Chachamim they made a gezerah for the whole Jewish people. Hope that sheds a little light. Yosef, you learned the Zohar. We have to have more light, bring more light. so as to shine more the Ora Torah. So that's a little bit, and to give you a little bit of an insight, maybe to appreciate more the Gzeirah that the Chachamim have on medications. Now, the Isal Kadaitach. Now the Gemara says the Isal Kadaitach. If you think that l'refuah kamachave, if you think that by eating the shetita, you told me that the shetita is, you told me that it's for the purpose of medication. And because it's for the medical purposes, and people don't eat it normally, you told me that the bracha on it is a shahakol. The Gemara says, if that's the case, the refuah, how is it permitted to do refuah on Shabbat? That's the Gemara's question. You told me that the point of this shetita is people use this for medical purposes. And you told me something that's for medical purposes, you told me generally not made for normal eating purposes, you told me the bracha shahakol. But if it's in medical purposes, how could you go ahead and drink it on Shabbat? How could you use this on Shabbat if you're not supposed to be doing medicine on Shabbat? That's the Gemara's question. And most probably, and let's say the purpose why they're using it, it's not a question of sakana, it's not a question of danger of life. So why should he be able to use this medication on Shabbat? That you're going ahead and he's mixing this medication, and obviously he's mixing these shita, these flour and the other things. So why should he be able to do that? Should it be a violation of the law of you're not allowed to take medication on Shabbat? Are we clear, Morris? Are we clear? The Gemara says the following. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says, Ba'at lo tizbara, you do not agree that you could go ahead and eat it on Shabbat? What do you mean? What do you mean? You're telling me you can't eat this on Shabbat, right? That's what you're trying to tell me. Because you're telling me it's for refuah purposes, for medical purposes. But not. We learned in the Mishnah. Kol ha'ocholin ochel adam l'refuah b'Shabbat. Something that's called a food. It's a food. It's clearly a food. It's made of you look at it, it looks like a food, like any other food. Right? It has in this shetita, we said it contains in it flour, it has oil, it's a food. Something that's a food, you're allowed to eat the food on Shabbat, and all liquids you could drink on Shabbat. Meaning, even though your purpose of why you're having this food is because, even though your purpose of having your food is for medical purposes, but since this is a food, and Tosfos points out that we're talking about things that sometimes a person might eat it for, even a healthy person sometimes would eat this food. Meaning generally this food is not eaten by healthy people. Healthy people don't eat this, it's not part of their diet. But sometimes a healthy person would eat it. So therefore, since a healthy person might eat it, and sometimes eats it, therefore you're allowed to go ahead and eat this on Shabbat, because it's not something, this food, you see, if you look at a medicine, have a great day. What? Right. This is an example. You have flour mixed with this oil and maybe food. It looks like food, and now, but you're eating this food. Meaning, most medications, it's a mixture, but it's a mixture of something that's not clearly a medication. When you look at a medication, when you take, let's say, herbs that are, right, it's like any other food. It's like any other food that you mix together, but it happens to be that people, this type of food, there's certain types of food that most people, healthy people, wouldn't eat. It's a food, but it's a food. It's not like a pill. A pill is very clear. A pill is very clear that a pill is medication. Everybody, if you look at a pill, a medicine, you go to the bottle from the pharmacy, nobody eats that. No healthy person will eat that pill. It's clearly medication. So that's something that's clearly medication. You have to have the allowance you have to fit the allowance in order to take medication on Shabbos. Either it should be a danger of life, either it should be an infection, either it should be a person's whole body is affected by it. Even if you're not in danger, you just have to, you feel the pain throughout your whole body, or you have to go lay down in bed. So any of those things, we allow you to take medication, meaning the actual taking medication in itself. What's the problem with taking a medicine? The problem is rabbinically. Well, the rabbi said, don't do it because we're afraid you might come to grind it. What'd you say? Right. So the question is, right. So very good. So we said the question is, now we said, am I allowed to take this food on Shabbat for my intent is for medical purposes? The Gemara says what the Gemara says. That food is food if it's food, meaning if this would be if nobody would eat this as food, if you would look at this and you say this is medicine, right? People generally wouldn't eat this at all for food purposes. If something is clearly medicine is not food. Now, but we did say early in the Gemara, if someone takes medicine and you have benefits from the medicine, the average pill, any pill that you take, you don't feel any enjoyment. Maybe there are some pills out there that people take have enjoyment. I was giving a class in Long Island University, and I was walking down. I was a little younger then, and I was walking down, and I was walking down the steps in the hall in the college on DeKalb Avenue in Brooklyn. And I was walking down and someone looked like he dropped some pills. So I said, I think you dropped some medication. Obviously, it wasn't medication that he dropped. It was some other type of pills. It's not in my mind that I should, I don't realize that this is what, but.
Rabbi, if someone's on Shabbat, right, and they have stuff, they cholesterol or something, they have to bring someone to a hospital.
Right.
So they go in the car to the hospital, and they shut the car off.
They should really get, right. Obviously, it's always best if a person, let's say, what I would say is a person has to go on Shabbat, their wife's expecting a baby, have a non-Jewish, have a Holocaust, take some other, instead of you driving your car, get a car service, a taxi.
You have to go on the car.
Right, so you go to the car and you get them into the hospital, if you have no way, I'm saying, obviously, now, if anything that you do that will delay, you shouldn't delay if it would be a question of life and death. The guy has a heart attack, you got to do whatever you got to do. You don't have to think about it. If it's gonna cause any delay, you don't do anything. Now, if you drop the guy off, right, once you drop the guy off and the guy is well, the guy is taken care of, then someone get a guy to close off the car. You shouldn't close off the car. Why do you need to close off the car? Get the guy to close off the car. Anything that you.
Why is not going to drive your car? Let's say you have to move it from the ambulance to the ambulance.
You'll ask him. You look for somebody. Once the guy is under control, he's brought to the hospital. Then let someone else. What'd you say? The risk is over. So now get someone else to close the car. Okay, getting back to the point over here. So the Gemara is saying that this shetita is not like other medications. It's a food. It's clearly a food. And there are some people that will actually eat it. There are some individuals that will eat this as a food even when they're healthy. Even though most people will not eat this unless there's some sort of stomach issue or something like that. That's why they're in here.
Sure that people who eat animals.
No, but I'm saying, again, no, that's not called normal in the normal thing. They're normal people, Tosfos says, that have this food. So since there's normal people that eat this food, even though your intent is for, the reason why you happen to be eating it is for the purpose of, because you have a stomach problem, but that's allowed on Shabbat. Just like a guy has a cold or some issue and he has chicken soup, right? Everybody says chicken soup is you have a cold, you have a problem, your throat, eat chicken soup. Why are you having chicken soup today? Why are you having tea? You don't generally drink tea. Why are you drinking tea? I have a problem with my throat. I want it to heal my throat. But it's a normal drink. People drink this. It's a drink that people, it's a food. Even though your intent is for medical purposes, that's not where the Chachamim said, where the rabbi said you can't take medication on Shabbos, because that's something that's called a food. It's not called a medicine. Even if you're in, that's what the Gemara
It's not against Shabbat.
on tea on Shabbat, you can't make a tea. You can't take the problem is the tea leaves is a raw item. It's a leaf, and if you go in and you pour hot water, okay, I'm not saying, but it depends how if you're a lot of people, the way we make tea, I can't tell you how the Sfardim make tea. We use a kli shlishi to make tea. That's how we use. I don't know about the Sfardim Risheni. Because the question is, the concern is maybe would the cliche means you pour the water into a cup, the cup becomes the cliche, and then if you go ahead and you put the tea leaves in the cliche, so we are concerned perhaps that it shouldn't come to cook the tea leaves. So therefore, we go ahead, if you didn't, now, so what many people do before Shabbat, they have something, they prepare something called scents. That they go ahead and they take leaves before Shabbat, they pour hot water over it before Shabbat, and therefore they make the strong, then it's already done, it's already made. What do you mean? I mean, we wouldn't, okay. I don't know what the Sfardim do. Everything is separate. We have to look into exactly how it's done.
I think as long as you rinse it before, I think it's
Okay, so we'll talk about it after the class. Okay.
or maybe not the same time. I think you could use the same dishwasher.
So
for
the
kneading milk.
the Gemara
You
the
have to
Gemara
preheat before.
the Gemara says
I don't
like
know
this.
the time.
The Gemara says, "El ma'isach gavra la'achila kumachave, hachinami gavra la'achila kumachave." The person is intending to eat it, and therefore, therefore, there's no problem of refuah on Shabbat with the shetita. So that's what the Gemara wants to say. The same way, the Mishnah says that you can eat the food that you're eating for medical purposes is permitted because it's food and it's not medication. So too, the shetita, you're having it's chila, you're eating it. So the Gemara says, Lishna Achrinu, there's another language, the Gemara says, warning. The Beit Midrash is empty. Lishna Achrina, the person has a mind, I'm eating. And you know what happens? As a result of my eating, you get healed. So too, hachinami. The shetita, the same thing. I'm eating the shetita. And therefore the refuah comes, and therefore there's no problem, the Gemara says, of having this shetita on Shabbat. Even though you happen to, you're the reason why you're having this thing is because for medical reasons. But since people do eat this not only for medical purposes, therefore it's called you're eating on Shabbat. We don't look at it like you're doing medicine on Shabbat. Now, and the Gemara says, "V'sricha de Rav Shmuel." We need Rav and Shmuel. What does Rav and Shmuel say? Rav and Shmuel tells us that you have to go ahead and say a bracha, right? Or Rav was the one who said, what did Rav say? On Shetita, Rav said, you say a shahakol niyeh b'dvaro. So you say a shahakol on Shetita, and we said, and what's the Shetita that you say a shahakol? It's when there's not so much flour. And most people use it for medical purposes. So the Gemara says, Shita is this flour, is the kernels of wheat that you roasted in the oven before you grounded it up, and then after you roasted it, then you mix these kernels with some other ingredients, and you make some sort of mix. And we're talking about when you put let's say you have a lot of oil in it, and you don't have much flour in it. No, but it's not thick. It's not because the Gemara said this. You're not violating on Shabbat. You can actually mix it because you're not violating kneading on Shabbat. K-N-E-A-D, because it does not become a thick. It doesn't become a one. We see again. You already grounded. Let's say it was already grounded before Shabbat. Now the question is, can I mix it? So the Gemara says if it's a very small amount of flour, you're not creating a thick mass, and therefore it's not considered you're not violating Lisha and Shabbat. So the Gemara says, what do I need to tell me that you have to say a shakol on this? It's a food. Since it's a food, so isn't it obvious that you have to say a shakol? So the Gemara says, the imehai. If I would only know that it's considered a food regarding Shabbat, that you can eat it on Shabbat, havamina la'achilaka mechavein. Refuah mela kahavye. I would have said that on Shabbat, when a person, you have a right to go ahead and use it on Shabbat. You have a right to go ahead and eat it on Shabbat because it's a food. But regarding the bracha, why are you eating it? It's true, but you're eating it. The whole purpose why you happen to be eating this is only for medical purposes. So it's true. It's called a food that you can go ahead and eat on Shabbat. But you know that the only reason why you're eating it is because you have medical issues. So maybe maybe you shouldn't say a bracha at all. If your whole intent of eating this food, it's true that other people eat it for other purposes. You might find individuals that eat it for other purposes, and because of that, you're allowed to go ahead and eat it on Shabbat. But it's not called that you're violating the Chachamim Gzeira of not doing things of medical on Shabbat, but of medication on Shabbat. But maybe there should be a problem of, maybe you shouldn't have to say a bracha because you don't have any benefit. Since you have benefit from it, so you have to say a bracha. So that's the conclusion of the Gemara, which we also had earlier in the Gemara, in the Masechta, that if a person takes some sort of item that was made for medical purposes, but it has a taste and has enjoyment, you have benefit from it, then from this Gemara we see that a person should say a bracha on such an item.
What's the Mishnah?
The Gemara is just focusing on, the Gemara got into different brachot on different food items, trying to identify, our Gemara is trying to identify, because the name of the parak is Ketzad Mevorchim. What's the bracha you say on different items? Our Gemara is identifying different items, and we're trying to figure out what's the appropriate bracha on the items. And that's what our Gemara is doing. No, again, the 7 species that the land of Israel, let's say on the fruits of the tree, the fruits, let's say olives, dates, pomegranates, there's a special after bracha the Chachamim gave for it. The Chachamim gave the special because of the uniqueness of the fruit, because of the chashivut, the importance of the fruit of this fruit. Just like when you go ahead and you have from the 5 grains, wheat, oat, spelt, barley, and rye, the Chachamim created a special bracha achrona, which is ala michya. So too, even though it's not bread, and only on bread you have to say birkat hamazon, but or bread or something that's that has kaveh sudah and so on and so forth. So the rabbis also instituted because of the on the mizono you say ala michya. So also to give chashivut to the special fruits of the land of Israel, they created a special bracha, a bracha of ala eitz. And you should know there was an opinion. We saw there were opinions that say you actually do birkat hamazon on grapes and olives and pomegranates. We don't hold that way, and therefore they made a special bracha achrona for. I believe borin nefashot people I don't think are as careful for borin nefashot. People have chicken and fish. I don't know if people are on top of their game to make sure they say. Meaning, I don't know if people in the community are aware of the importance and are constantly remembering to say borin nefashot. After they have a drink of water, they have a drink of soda, they have whatever they're having. I don't.
They are careful with.
I presume they're more careful with ala michya. I don't know if people are as much. I didn't take a survey, but I think that's something that people should be aware. Morris, am I correct that some people don't know, are not aware of borin nefashot enough? People are not trained enough to do that on a regular basis. I'm correct in that. My speculation. You think he says he thinks my speculation is correct, and that's changing. Morris is changing the community, and he's going to be training everybody about the importance of saying borin nefashot.
If you don't know, you don't know how to say mifket from Israel. If you don't know,
So if you don't know, then you do the regular that you would say outside the land of Israel. So now the Gemara gets into an interesting point. Sha'ala pat. Here's something that we could relate to a little more. We're not relating to, hopefully no one has any problems with their stomach, that they should not need any of this shtita food. Ala patu omer amotzi lechem min haaretz, right? The Mishnah, the Gemara is now going back on the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, we are now before the wide lines, 3 lines before the wide lines. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Now this is going on the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, on bread, Mike, you there? Yosef Tzaddik, you there? The Mishnah says, and what do you say on bread? Amotzi lechem min haaretz. That's what the Mishnah said, right? So the Gemara says you should know that it's a matter of dispute. What is the proper text for the bracha? Is the bracha hamotzi lechem min haaretz, or is it motzi lechem min haaretz? Our Mishnah says hamotzi.
We know the answer, Rabbi.
You know the answer. That's true, but we got to know how. We want to know how we got to the answer. We want to know what is it all about. We want to understand why is the bracha hamotzi lechem min haaretz. The Tana Rabbanan, ma omer. You have it, Morris? What is the bracha that you say? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So the first opinion says the bracha that you say is hamotzi lechem min haaretz. However, Reb Nechemya omer motzi lechem min haaretz. You don't say the bracha. You don't say hamotzi, but motzi. Now the Gemara is going to explain what's going on over here. The general rule is that when you say a bracha, you're thanking Hashem for what Hashem has done, right? You're thanking Hashem that He's created this item. You're not going to be thanking Hashem that He's going to bring bread. You're not saying you go. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed be Hashem that you're going to bring bread from the ground. Rather, we're going to be thanking Hashem that you are the one who brings bread, that you have brought bread, that you have brought flour for us, right? So that we need to be thanking Hashem for something that He has done. So the Gemara says,
we're doing the present tense.
we do in the present, right? Like Borei creates Kriyadama, but we'll not say the bracha on the future that you're going to create. So Omar Rav, Motzi kuliyama lo pligi de apik mashma. Everybody agrees that Motzi implies that you already have brought forth. That you have already brought forth in the past. And that's an appropriate, definitely should work. A person would say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam motzi lechem min haaretz. Should work, the Gemara says. It's not, it should be a proper text because you're thanking Hashem for having brought food from the ground. The Ksiv, where do we see that the word motzi means the past? The pasuk says, when Bilam spoke about the Jewish people, he says, Kel motzi'am mitzrayim. It was post the Jews left Egypt. And Bilam says, God who took them out from Egypt. So motzi'am, motzi means it has already been done. Ki pligi, what is the argument? The argument meaning everybody would agree that motzi should work. The question in the Gemara is, does hamotzi work? Maybe hamotzi shouldn't work. What's the machloket? They're arguing in hamotzi. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold, hamotzi the apik mashma. Hamotzi is also appropriate to say because hamotzi implies the past. Now you can ask the obvious question, Rabbi, if motzi definitely works, and the whole question is, should you say hamotzi or say motzi? But motzi definitely works. Have a great day. So why should the halacha be to say hamotzi? And why don't you just say motzi? If motzi definitely works, you should say motzi. So the Yerushalmi says an amazing thing, that we don't want you to mix the letters, right? What letters? Hamotzi Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. So if you say hamotzi, so it goes from a mem to a hey, and you don't swallow those letters so easily. But if you say lechem min haaretz, and you have two letters of the same letters next to each other, as we learned about in the Shema, you have to be very careful. B'chol levavcha, you have to pause between when two letters of avadetem mehera. You can't say vavadetem mehera. I just swallowed a mem. I can't say b'chol levavcha. I just swallowed a lamed. B'chol levavcha. You didn't even hear that. I missed a lamed. B'chol levavcha. I missed a lamed. And they say b'chol levavcha, right? Yosef HaTzadik, Shmuley, Avrami, right? B'chol levavcha. Yep. All the letters, and that's why a lot in the art scroll they'll have some sort of line. It's important what type of sitter you use, because certain siddurim have like lines in between to show there's a space. You have to put a space between those letters. So too, when you say so
people aren't careful with their hafta. The hafta is
right.
Because if you say the hafta, you won't put the hafta. You're saying you did love Hashem. The hafta is saying you love Him there.
Beautiful. So also, people. So therefore, maybe it's best. That's why it's best not to say the bracha motzi lechem, because if you say motzi lechem, then you're going to go ahead and have an extra challenge to remember to separate the letters, the mem and the mem. Now the rabbis, we still have to remember in the bracha motzi lechem and aretz, we still have two mems that are together. Where do you have to be careful? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Between lechem, there's a mem at the end of lechem. So I always make sure I try to be careful to say, put a pause in. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, not hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I just followed the mem. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I lost the mem on the deal. Got it? You have to make sure. A lot of people don't even realize that they've missed the mem on the deal. Avrami, you hear what I'm saying? People have to be careful.
Yes.
That's
She also-
what'd you say?
Yeah, like very pre-Adama, Adama, you gotta be careful of a lot of these things.
Right. So that's what the Gemara. So now the Gemara says, Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold Hamotzi the Apik Mashma. Where do we find that it means that Hashem already did it in the past? The Ksiv Hamotzi Lecha. Moshe says to the Jewish people, at the end of the 40 years that they were in this desert, he says to the Jewish people, Hashem is Hamotzi Lecha. Hashem is the one not who is going to bring in the future, rather who has brought for you, who has in the past. Hamotzi Lecha Mayim Mitzrach Halamish. He's brought water from the rock. That was Hashem. There was a rock with the Jewish people. And Hashem, there was a rock. Moshe Rabbeinu did not, was trying to get water from the rock. It was a special rock that Hashem went ahead and brought water forth for the Jewish people. So we see Hamotzi also definitely can mean the past. So that's why the Chacham say it's an appropriate language to say. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz is the appropriate language to say. I want to wish, when we talk about the British ones, I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. And we'll be in touch, everybody. And we'll continue tomorrow. We'll continue with this Gemara.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a
Thank you.
great day, everybody. You too.
You too, everybody.